If I asked you to predict with genuine accuracy how long you were going to live, where would you even look? I mean, I assume most people would immediately think of their parents, right?
Yeah.
Genetics.
That's the standard answer, for sure.
Hmm.
Or maybe you look at your latest blood panel.
Right. Your cholesterol. Or, you might calculate how many miles you run a week or count how many kale smoothies you forced down in the last year.
And look, they're not wrong. Genetics matter, of course. Cholesterol matters. But if we're really trying to predict longevity, and I think more importantly, vitality, those metrics are, well, they're incomplete.
Incomplete how?
It's like looking at the paint job of a car to see if the engine is about to blow. It just doesn't give you the full picture.
Right, because today we're going to look in some very, very different places. We are unpacking this massive stack of research we've titled Foundations of Longevity. And let me just say, the sources here are wild.
A little unconventional.
A little. We aren't just looking at a general practitioner's advice here. We're synthesizing insights from, Stanford urologists, neurobiologists, holistic nutritionists, and, get this, a psychic medium and a billion-dollar entrepreneur.
It sounds like a strange dinner party, doesn't it? But there is a very rigorous method to this madness. What we're trying to do is build a system.
A system.
Exactly. The mission for this deep dive is to organize all this chaos into a framework that actually makes sense for you. So we're going to treat the human being like a computer system.
Okay, I like that.
We'll start with the hardware. That's the physical, the cellular, the structural health of the body. Then we move to the software. So how we wire the brain and maintain neuroplasticity.
And finally,
we look at the operating system. That's the psychological and the philosophical frameworks that keep the whole machine from crashing.
I love that framework because it really does make all the weird details fit. And I have to say, looking at this hardware section, some of these details are incredibly specific. I mean, we're going to talk about a study involving rats that lived 90% longer.
Which is just an insane number.
It's mind-boggling if that translates to humans. We're going to talk about why muscle is basically an organ. But we're starting with something that, I'll be honest, I never once thought of as a longevity marker.
We are starting with the biological canaries.
Specifically, sperm.
Yes.
Now, I have to push back immediately because if I'm a listener, maybe I'm a guy in my 40s or 50s or even younger and I'm not trying to have kids, why on earth should I care about my sperm count?
Right.
It feels like a reproductive metric, not a survival metric. If my plumbing works, I'm good, right?
That is the common assumption.
Right.
But biologically, it is dead wrong. You have to understand that reproduction is the ultimate biological luxury.
Okay.
It is incredibly energy expensive and complex for the body to produce high-quality DNA delivery systems, which is really what sperm are.
So it's a surplus signal. Like if you can afford to make good sperm, it means everything else must be working perfectly.
Exactly. Dr. Michael L. Eisenberg, who's a professor of urology at Stanford, calls sperm quality the sixth vital sign.
The sixth vital sign. So like blood pressure, heart rate, sperm count.
Precisely. His argument is that your body will only allocate resources to sperm production if every other system, going vascular, metabolic, hormonal, is running perfectly. If the system comes under stress, if there's inflammation or vascular disease, the sperm factory is the first thing the body shuts down to save energy.
It's the first thing to go offline.
Correct.
Right.
So if you have a low sperm count or poor motility, it's not just a fertility issue. It's a dashboard warning light. It's the canary in the coal mine telling you that the air down there is toxic.
Okay, that makes sense theoretically. I get the logic. But is there data to back that up? Does it actually predict, death?
There is massive data. Eisenberg looked at this one study out of Denmark involving about 50,000 men.
50,000, that's a huge cohort.
Massive. And these weren't old men on their deathbeds. They were tested around age 40. The researchers then tracked them for decades.
How long are we talking?
We're talking 30 to 40 years of follow-up. And the correlation was, it was terrifyingly clear. Men with low semen quality at age 40 were significantly more likely to die in the following decades.
Wait. Die from what? I mean, are we talking about testicular cancer, something related?
That's the kicker. Die from everything.
Everything.
Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, completely distinct cancers. The sperm count wasn't the cause of death. It was the signal that the underlying machinery, the whole system, was faulty.
That is sobering. So it's a general proxy for overall health.
It is. And another study of about 5,000 men showed that higher semen quality correlated with a lower likelihood of being hospitalized for any reason. But here is where the research gets really nuanced and I think really interesting, specifically regarding obesity.
Ah, the fat tummy factor.
Right. We all know that visceral fat, that belly fat, is inflammatory. It's bad news. And generally men with more belly fat have worse sperm. But Eisenberg found a paradox.
Okay.
If you take a skinny guy, someone who wants fit on the outside, but he has a low sperm count, he is actually a stronger candidate for future health problems than an obese guy who has a normal sperm count.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
So the visible health being thin is less important than this invisible marker.
In this specific context, yes. It implies that the obese guy with good sperm has such a robust constitution, his body can somehow handle the metabolic stress of the fat and still produce life.
Wow.
The skinny guy with low counts, he might have a hidden systemic failure, maybe it's hormonal, maybe mitochondrial, that hasn't shown up on a standard blood test yet.
Okay, so if I'm a male listener, I'm probably panicking slightly right now. Is this fixable, or is it just, well, my count is low, I guess I'm doomed?
No, it is absolutely fixable. That's the good news. Sperm regenerates roughly every 72 to 90 days.
So you have a new batch every 3 months.
A completely new batch.
Yeah.
Dr. Eisenberg shared a patient story that was really encouraging. A guy came in, tested poorly, he changed his lifestyle and started a specific supplement regimen, CoQ10, omega-3s, and selenium.
Just off-the-shelf supplements. Nothing exotic.
Nothing exotic. CoQ10 is crucial for mitochondrial energy, which sperm need to swim. Omega-3s for the membrane structure. Selenium for antioxidant protection. He came back for testing later, and his count had doubled.
Doubled, just from that.
Doubled.
Yeah.
And his motility, which is how well they swim, increased by 50%. And this wasn't a 10-year project. This happened relatively quickly. It just shows that if you give the body the right raw materials and remove the insults, that sixth vital sign can bounce back.
You mentioned removing insults. I assume we're talking about the usual suspects. Smoking, drinking.
Those, yes, for sure. But also environmental factors. Exposure to plastics and pesticides is huge. There are no endocrine disruptors. But there's a mechanical one, too, that people forget. Heat.
Heat.
Scrotal heat. There's a reason the testicles are outside the body. They need to be cooler than your core temperature.
Right.
So if you were sitting with a laptop directly on your lap for 8 hours a day, or if you were spending hours in a hot tub or sauna without cooling down properly, you are literally cooking the machinery.
Okay, note to self. Keep the laptop on the desk. Now, obviously, sperm is a male-specific marker, but this underlying issue of vascular health, how blood flows and delivers nutrients, that applies to everyone.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the next big canary in the coal mine, nitric oxide.
This is critical, and it's something we looked at from insights by Kathy Eason and Dr. Marisa Snyder. The headline here is that nitric oxide, or NO, is this gas that your body produces to relax blood vessels.
It's a vasodilator.
Exactly. It widens the pipe so blood can flow freely. It lowers your blood pressure.
And this becomes a problem as we age.
Especially for women. Nitric oxide production is tightly linked to estrogen. When estrogen drops during perimenopause and menopause, NO production falls off a cliff.
Falls off a cliff.
It really does. This is why a woman's risk for heart disease suddenly catches up to men's after menopause.
Yeah.
The protective effect of estrogen-driven NO is just gone.
So we need more nitric oxide. I assume the answer is eat more leafy greens.
That is part of the answer, for sure. Nitrate-rich greens like arugula, beets, and spinach are the raw materials. But, and this is a huge but, there's a trap that most people fall into that completely negates the salad they just ate.
Okay, you can't leave me hanging. What's the trap?
The mouthwash thing.
The mouthwash thing. I read this in the notes and I had to reread it 3 times. You're telling me that using mouthwash prevents me from getting the benefits of eating beets.
If it's an antiseptic mouthwash, you know, the kind that says it kills 99.9% of germs, then yes. Here's the mechanism, because it's fascinating.
Please.
Humans actually cannot convert the nitrates in food into the active form we need. We lack the enzyme.
Wait, so we can't digest our own vegetables?
Not fully. We've outsourced the first step of that process to bacteria that live in the deep crypts of our tongue. These specific bacteria have the enzyme. It's called nitrate reductase.
So the bacteria do the work for us.
They do. So you chew the beet, the bacteria grab the nitrates and they convert them into nitrates. You then swallow the nitrates, and your stomach acid finishes the job to create nitric oxide.
It's a relay race, from the beet to the bacteria to the stomach.
It is. Now imagine you wake up and you swish with some strong antiseptic mouthwash. You feel minty and clean. But you have just nuked the first runner in the relay race.
You wiped out the microbiome in your mouth.
Completely. So you eat that healthy salad, the nitrates hit your tongue.
Yeah.
and nothing happens. They stay as nitrates.
Yeah.
You swallow them and you just pee them out. You get zero cardiovascular benefit.
That is wild. So in the pursuit of fresh breath, we are actively raising our blood pressure.
In some cases, yes. There are studies showing that if you take a healthy person and put them on strong mouthwash for a week, their blood pressure can measurably creep up. You are chemically severing the link between your diet and your vascular system.
So ditch the blue stuff.
Or at least use a non-antiseptic version.
Yeah.
But yes, the point is to protect the oral microbiome. Kathy Eason actually shared this crazy personal story about how powerful NO support can be for her.
Oh, yeah.
She takes a specific pollen complex and NO supplement. She decided to do a washout, stop taking it, just to see what would happen.
The classic biohacker, let's see what happens if I quit experiment.
Right. And the result was immediate and psychological. She started having these intense anxiety dreams. She reported literally physically fighting in her sleep, flailing her arms around.
Just from dropping a vascular supplement, that seems extreme.
It suggests that for her, that vascular support was playing a huge role in calming her nervous system during sleep. When she resumed the supplement, the fighting stopped completely. It really highlights how interconnected these systems are. If your blood flow is constricted, your brain knows it, and on some level it panics.
Okay, so we've got the vascular system covered, sperm for men, nitric oxide for everyone. Now let's talk about structure. Because you can have great blood flow, but if the frame of the house is rotting, you're in trouble. And this brings us to Dr. Gabrielle Leon and what she calls muscle-centric medicine.
Dr. Leon is a bit of a revolutionary in this space. Her core thesis is that we have been looking at the obesity epidemic completely wrong. We focus entirely on losing fat. She argues we should be focusing on gaining muscle.
She calls muscle the organ of longevity.
She does. And I think when most people hear muscle, they think bodybuilding. They think vanity. They think flexing in the mirror.
Right, it's a cosmetic thing.
And that is a branding problem. Because muscle is not just about looking good in a t-shirt. It is an endocrine organ. It secretes signaling molecules called myokines that communicate with your brain, your bones, and your immune system.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it is your metabolic sink.
A sink? What do you mean?
It's where you dispose of glucose. When you eat a cookie, that sugar has to go somewhere. If you have a lot of healthy muscle, the muscle just soaks it up and uses it for fuel.
Okay.
If you have low muscle mass, that sugar has nowhere to go. It stays in the blood, spikes your insulin, and eventually gets stored as fat. Muscle is your armor against diabetes.
So what is the prescription? Because I feel like protein recommendations are all over the map. You hear so many conflicting things.
Dr. Lyon draws a very hard line in the sand here. She says the absolute floor for human health is 100 grams of high-quality protein per day.
Okay, let's pause there. Because 100 grams is not a trivial amount. If I'm eating eggs, that's what, like 15 eggs?
Roughly, yes.
Yeah.
Or a significantly large chicken breast and a steak. It's a commitment.
And I can hear the listeners right now, especially the ones who have been told that high protein is bad for longevity, that it activates mTOR and causes aging. Is there a danger in hitting this 100-gram number? Are we aging ourselves faster to build this muscle?
That is the classic debate, mTOR versus muscle. But Dr. Lyon argues, and the clinical data really supports this, that the risk of sarcopenia, of muscle wasting, is infinitely higher and more dangerous than the theoretical risk of protein-stimulating aging pathways.
So sarcopenia is the real enemy.
It's the beginning of the end. If you are frail, if you fall and break a hip because you have no glutes to catch you, the mortality rate is astronomical. We have to prioritize the armor.
We prioritize the armor. But here's the thing. It's not just about the total amount. It's about how you eat it. This is where most people fail. It's a concept called protein pulsing.
Right.
I read the notes on this, and frankly, I felt personally attacked. I'm a snacker. I'll eat a handful of almonds, maybe a yogurt later. You're saying that's useless.
Useless is a harsh word, but for stimulating muscle synthesis, yeah, it's pretty inefficient.
Okay.
This comes from a study by Arnold and colleagues. They took two groups of women. Group A ate their protein in one big bolus, a huge meal. Group B spread it out, the pulsing method, snacking all day long.
Logic would tell me that steady energy is better, keep the tank full all day.
Logic would be wrong here. The group that ate the large single meal maintained significantly more lean muscle mass.
Why? That doesn't make intuitive sense.
It's because of something called the leucine threshold. Think of muscle synthesis like a heavy light switch, a really heavy one. It takes a lot of pressure to flip it to on-an.
Okay.
That pressure comes from an amino acid called leucine, which is found in protein. If you eat 10 grams of protein, like your handful of almonds, You aren't applying enough pressure. The switch doesn't budge. It stays off.
So I'm taking in the calories, but I'm not actually triggering the build.
Exactly. You're just fueling the fat cells. You need roughly 30 to 50 grams in one sitting to slam that switch into the on position. That's why Dr. Lyon suggests booking your day with protein. 30 to 50 grams at breakfast and 30 to 50 grams at your last meal.
No, for the listeners who might need a really compelling reason to eat that much steak or tofu beyond just muscle is good,
Yeah.
there was a connection in the research between muscle mass and erectile dysfunction.
Yes, and this brings us right back to the urology connection we started with. Dr. Lyon was the senior author on a paper in Sexual Medicine Reviews. They found a staggering link. 73% of men with sarcopenia, with low muscle mass, had severe erectile dysfunction.
73%.
Versus only 43% of non-sarcopenic men. That's a massive delta. It just shows that structural strength is directly tied to sexual function. If you are weak physically, your vascular responsiveness suffers.
That is a better motivator than any gym poster I've ever seen.
Isn't it?
And Dr. Lyon practices what she preaches, right? Even with her kids.
Oh, absolutely. She shared this story about her 4-year-old son, Leonidas. He apparently does sprints on the treadmill before bed.
A 4-year-old doing sprints.
A 4-year-old. And when she asks him why he does it, his reasoning is, hard work is good.
I mean, with a name like Leonidas, you kind of have to be a warrior. That is hilarious and slightly intimidating.
It sets a high bar, but it speaks to the mindset. Muscle requires stimulus. It requires effort. You cannot buy muscle. You have to earn it.
All right, let's move deeper into the body. We've done the vital signs, we've done tissue. Now let's go cellular. And I want to get weird here.
Let's do it.
Because in every longevity stack, there's always that one supplement that sounds like science fiction. In this research, it's carbon-60.
Or buckyballs.
Right. And I have to be honest, when I read the source material from Chris Burrs and saw lived 90% longer, my skepticism meter just redlined. That is a massive claim. If a human lives to 80, 90% longer is 152, are we really seeing that kind of extension?
We have to be incredibly careful with the translation from a rat to a human. The study you're referencing, the body study from 2012, is legendary in the biohacking space, precisely because the results were so anomalous. Wistar rats usually live about 3 years. The rats given C60 dissolved in olive oil lived nearly 6 years.
That's staggering. That's a doubling of their lifespan.
It is. It's the single largest longevity boost ever recorded in a mammal study. But, and this is a huge, but rats aren't people. Rats die very easily from oxidative stress and tumors.
And C60 is an antioxidant.
It's a super antioxidant. The theory is that C60 is a molecule shaped like a soccer ball, hence the buckyball name. It gets into the mitochondria and acts like a sponge for free radicals.
A sponge.
Yeah, it doesn't get used up like vitamin C where it donates an electron and it's done. It just sits there and soaks up the toxic waste that your mitochondria produce while making energy over and over again.
So because the rats were protected from their own metabolic waste, they didn't get tumors and just kept living.
Exactly. The study showed they didn't get tumors, and they didn't show cognitive decline until the very, very end of their life. There was another part of that study where they injected rats with carbon tetrachloride, which is a lethal liver toxin.
That sounds pleasant.
Science is rough sometimes. But the rats that were pre-treated with ESS60, which is the consumable form of C60, showed almost complete liver recovery. It acted as a shield against that chemical stress.
So it might not make us live to 150, but it might act as a shield against the things that would otherwise kill us early.
That is the current working theory. Chris Burrs, who manufactures it, shared some anecdotes. He mentioned a business coach who had used an alarm clock for 50 years to wake up. After taking ESS60, he started waking up naturally, refreshed before the alarm even went off.
Wow.
Burrs himself said he used to get these severe migraines, and they completely stopped for 18 months after he started taking the supplement.
Which implies it's doing something to the vascular or neurological inflammation levels right now. But whether you take the buckyballs or not, the principle is clear. Protect the mitochondria.
Right. And that leads us to the flip side. What happens when we fail to protect them? And we have this concept of metabolic contraction from Dr. Gus Vickery and Natalie Nidham.
This was the part about the fuel line, right? This really resonated with me.
Yes. Think about the high performer listener. You're stressed, you're traveling, you're grinding. What is the first thing you drop?
The routine, 100%. I stop taking the vitamins, I eat the airport sandwich, I skip the gym, I tell myself, I'll fix it when I get home.
And Dr. Vickery argues that is the exact moment of maximum danger. Because stress isn't just a feeling, it is a metabolic demand. When you are stressed, your body is burning through magnesium, B vitamins, and glutathione at double or triple the normal rate.
So I'm driving the car faster, but I've decided to stop putting gas in it.
It's worse than that.
Yeah.
You're driving faster, and you've cut the oil line. Natalie Niddam proved this on herself. She took this high-end metabolomics test called Therium after a period of travel stress where she stopped her usual supplements.
And how did she feel?
Subjectively, she felt fine. Maybe a little tired, but nothing major. But biologically, the test showed she was crashing. Her glutathione, the master antioxidant, was tanked. Her mitochondria were sputtering. Her body had entered metabolic contraction. It was cannibalizing its own reserves just to keep the lights on.
That is scary. It means our subjective feeling of I can handle this is a lie. Our bodies are screaming for help and we can't even hear it.
Exactly. And if you stay in that state for too long, that's when the immune system fails. Which leads us to the darkest but perhaps most important part of the hardware discussion, immunity and cancer.
This is Dr. Amy Horniman's section, and she has a terrifying personal story that goes with this.
She does. Dr. Horniman is known as the thyroid fixer. She's very health conscious. Yet she was diagnosed with uterine cancer at a young age, and it progressed with shocking speed.
How does that happen to someone who's doing everything right?
Her hypothesis, and this is backed by a lot of emerging immunology, is that a prior viral infection, specifically COVID-19, suppressed her immune surveillance system.
Immune surveillance.
We have these cells called natural killer cells, NK cells. They are the snipers of the immune system.
The snipers. I like that.
Their job is to wander around the body, spot a cell that has turned cancerous, and take it out before it can become a tumor. They are our first and most important line of defense.
So the virus blinded the snipers.
That's a great way to put it. Viral infections can suppress the interferon response and the NK cell function. This creates what she calls a permissive environment for cancer. It's not that the virus gave her cancer, but it took down the guards that would have normally stopped it in its tracks.
There was an oncologist mentioned in the sources who saw this exact pattern too, wasn't there?
Yes, a patient who had a totally clear CT scan in 2019. Then came a severe infection, and within 6 months, she had stage 4 lung cancer. The speed of the progression was the anomaly. It was terrifying.
That is terrifying, but we are here for solutions. What does Dr. Horniman say we can do to wake those NK cells back up, to get the snipers back on duty?
She lists a few powerful interventions. One is thymosin alpha-1. It's a peptide that helps modulate the immune system. It helps retrain it to be more effective.
Okay.
Another one is iodine. Most people think iodine is just for the thyroid, but it also upregulates the p53 gene.
P53, remind me what that is.
It's known as the guardian of the genome. It's a tumor suppressor gene. It helps prevent mutations from getting out of control. And finally, fasting. Intermittent or longer fasts induce autophagy, which is the body's process for cleaning out damaged cells before they can cause trouble.
So keeping the immune system vigilant is the final piece of the hardware puzzle.
Correct. We've covered the vital signs, the muscle, the mitochondria, and the immune defense. That is the body. But a Ferrari with a computer virus is still useless. So now we need to look at the software.
The brain. This is my favorite part because it gives me an excuse to goof off. We're talking about Dr. Andrew Huberman and the concept of play.
And this is surprisingly hard science. Dr. Huberman, who's a neurobiologist at Stanford, argues that play is the portal to neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself, to learn new things, to stay young.
But define play, because I think as adults we completely forget how to do it.
Huberman defines it very specifically. It must be low stakes, low adrenaline, but high focus. If you are playing tennis and you are furious because you're losing, that is not play. That is stress. Play requires a feeling of safety.
It's the difference between a dog fighting and a dog wrestling with its friend in the park.
That is the perfect analogy. And the biology backs this up. Rat studies by Panksepp and Civi showed that when rats play, that rough and tumble wrestling they do, it releases endogenous opioids in part of the brain called the periaqueductal gray area.
Opioids, so play literally gets them high.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
It creates a chemical state of well-being that facilitates flexibility in the prefrontal cortex. It allows the brain to try new pathways and combinations without fear of consequence.
There is a great anecdote in the notes about Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist.
Yes. Feynman was a certified genius, but he was also a legendary prankster. He used to pick locks at Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project just to mess with security and prove a point. He called it mischief.
Mischief!
And Huberman argues that this playful spirit kept his mind flexible. It allowed him to look at physics problems from weird, creative angles that more serious, rigid scientists couldn't see.
So if we want to keep our brains young, we need to be a little mischievous. We need to find activities where the outcome doesn't matter, but the engagement is high.
And we can even adopt play postures. Huberman mentions that simple things like tilting your head or softening your eyes actually signal to your own nervous system that we are safe, we can explore. It unlocks the chemistry of learning.
I love that. Head tilts for longevity. But we also have to talk about the scary side of brain aging, dementia. And Dr. Tommy Wood had some really interesting and frankly hopeful takes on this.
Dr. Wood really challenges the idea that dementia is purely genetic or inevitable. He points out that August Eder, who was the very first patient diagnosed with Alzheimer's by Dr. Alois Alzheimer, likely didn't have what we consider Alzheimer's today. She didn't have the APOE4 genetic markers.
What did she have?
Likely a combination of vascular issues and environmental stress. Wood argues that most dementia is largely an environmental and lifestyle disease, and he gives some very practical, almost mundane advice that people just ignore.
Like fixing your hearing.
Yes. Treat sensory loss immediately. If you need a hearing aid, get it. If you need cataracts fixed, do it. The brain relies on input. If you cut off the visual or auditory input, the processing centers for those senses start to atrophy. And that atrophy can spread to other areas of the brain.
It's literally use it or lose it.
Literally.
Yeah.
He also mentions gum disease. There is a strong and growing link between the bacteria that cause gum disease and the same bacteria being found in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. So flossing and using xylitol is actually brain protection.
And what about exercise for the brain? Is it all about crossword puzzles?
Crosswords are okay, but they are what he called a passive task. You're retrieving information you already know. Dr. Wood suggests open skill activities.
Open skill?
Things that require reaction, coordination, and real-time processing. Dancing, ball sports like tennis or pickleball, even complex video games like StarCraft.
StarCraft, the real-time strategy game.
Yes, there was a study showing that playing complex strategy games improves brain network connectivity. It's cognitive load. You have to manage resources, react to attacks, plan ahead. It forces the brain to work up a sweat.
There was also a specific physical workout protocol mentioned, the Norwegian 4x4.
This is for the vascular side of brain health. The study showed that high-intensity interval training, specifically 4 minutes at 90% capacity, repeated 4 times, improved the structure of the hippocampus.
And the hippocampus is the memory center.
Correct. And the improvements weren't temporary. They lasted for years. It turns out that getting your heart rate way, way up is one of the best things you can do to fertilize your memory center.
Okay, so we've rewired the hardware, we've updated the software with play and intense exercise. Now we need to look at the operating system, the psychology of it all. Because you can be fit and smart, but if your mind is a torture chamber, you aren't going to live a long, happy life.
This is the realm of resilience. And we start with Dr. Diana Hill and her concept of wise effort.
She contrasts this with brute force, right?
Yes. And I think a lot of us, especially in the health and performance space, are brute forcers. We will discipline ourselves into submission. But Dr. Hill argues that is not sustainable. She shared a heartbreaking story about her own battle with anorexia.
She was a teenager.
She was. She dropped to 72 pounds. And then later, in grad school, she relapsed. And she describes this moment where she was looking in the mirror of a gas station bathroom. She was just exhausted, trying to maintain this rigid control over her body. And suddenly, she saw her own patients in her reflection.
That's a powerful moment.
It was a lightning bolt. She realized she was treating herself with a cruelty she would never inflict on the people she was trying to help. And that was the turning point. She chose self-compassion. She calls it wise effort, aligning your actions with your values and your natural energy, rather than constantly fighting against yourself.
She suggests a technique called effect labeling to help with this. What is that?
It's incredibly simple, but profoundly effective. When you are in a storm of emotion, anger, anxiety, sadness, you just name it out loud or in your head. I am feeling anxiety. I am feeling anger.
Just saying the word helps?
It does. Brain scans show it moves the activity from the emotional reactive center, the amygdala, to the thinking prefrontal cortex. It gives you just enough distance to make a wise choice rather than a reactive one.
That connects really well to the next expert, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who talks about the power of solitude.
Chatterjee believes we are suffering from a crisis of silence. We outsource all our health decisions to apps and experts. We have sleep trackers, step counters, calorie apps. We've completely stopped listening to our own bodies.
We don't trust ourselves anymore.
We don't. And his prescription is radical in this day and age. Daily solitude, no phone, no podcast, no book, just you and your own thoughts for a few minutes.
That sounds terrifying to a lot of people.
It is. But the goal is interoception. That's the ability to feel what's actually happening inside your body. There was this fascinating study in The Lancet. They took autistic individuals who suffered from high anxiety. They trained them to detect their own heartbeats, literally just sitting and feeling for their pulse without touching their wrist.
And that simple act helped with their anxiety.
Significantly. 31% recovered from their anxiety diagnosis versus only 16% in the control group. By connecting with the physical reality of their body, they grounded their nervous system. If you can't hear your own body, you can't take care of it.
So we need quiet to hear the signal. But sometimes the signal is distorted by our past. That's where Busy Gold comes in. She talks about brain patterns.
This is the deep psychological work. Gold argues that our childhood environments create these lenses of self-deception. We develop patterns to survive as kids, and then we repeat them endlessly as adults without even realizing it.
She used a reference to the movie Fight Club that I thought was brilliant.
It's a great analogy. She shared a story about her mother, who suffered from severe mental illness. Her mother would throw things like a heavy brass candlestick in a rage. And then, moments later, she would completely deny doing it.
Gaslighting.
That's what Busy thought initially. She's lying to me. But then she watched Fight Club, and spoiler alert for a 25-year-old movie where the protagonist and the antagonist are the same person, but he doesn't know it.
They are dissociated from their own actions.
Right. And Busy realized her mother wasn't lying. She literally could not perceive her own actions. Her brain had edited out the violence to protect her own self-image. Busy realized we all do this to some degree. We have blind spots. We deceive ourselves about our habits, our relationships, our stress levels.
So the longevity tip here is to break the illusion, to see ourselves clearly.
It's radical honesty. Analyze your reaction patterns. Are you hyper-independent because you learned you couldn't trust caregivers? Are you people-pleasing because you learned that was the only way to get love? If you don't fix the underlying pattern, the stress of maintaining the lie will eventually break the body.
This brings us to the final section, the end game. We've talked about living longer and better, but we also have to talk about the reality of life, which is that it ends.
This is the philosophy section, and it's about perspective. Kendra Scott, the entrepreneur, talks about failure.
She's a billionaire now, but she wasn't always.
Far from it. She started a hat business for cancer patients when she was 19. It failed after 5 years. She was broke, no degree, sitting on a curb in the rain. The classic rock-bottom story.
But she reframed it.
She sees failure as a bridge. That failure taught her the lessons she needed to launch her jewelry brand. If she hadn't failed at the hats, she wouldn't have built the empire. For longevity, this mindset is crucial. If every setback crushes you, the stress load is too high. You have to be able to metabolize failure and see it as data.
And then there is the ultimate failure, I guess, or the ultimate end, death. John Edward, the psychic medium, had a really practical take on grief.
Yeah, and regardless of what you think about psychic ability, his advice on communication is so sound. He says, don't suppress grief. And more importantly, don't wait until someone is dead to say what needs to be said.
The in case I get abducted by aliens conversation.
Exactly. Have that conversation now. Tell your parents, your partner, your kids what they mean to you. Clear the air, because carrying the weight of unsaid words is a heavy, toxic burden that eats away at you for years.
And finally, we have a meditation on transience from Bruce Wagner and Rem Koolhaas.
This was the most poetic part of the research for me. Bruce Wagner told the story of Hanif Kureishi. He's a writer who had a terrible fall and became paralyzed.
Wow.
A quadriplegic.
God, that is a nightmare scenario.
It is. And Kureishi sent Wagner a book he had written, but he couldn't sign it. He can't use his hands, so he put his thumbprint on the page.
A thumbprint?
Wagner described it as the scent of life. It was this symbol of total fragility, but also of profound grace and persistence. It's a reminder that even if we do everything right, even if we take the C60 and eat the 100 grams of protein and do the sprints, we are still fragile.
And Rem Koolhaas, the famous architect, he echoes that. He's 80 years old.
And he refuses to retire, but not in a stubborn, workaholic way. He says he continues to engage because the scent of life is in the collaboration. It's in the work. He shifted his focus from being the solo genius to being a platform for others. He argues that retirement stopping completely is the quickest way to disconnect from that vitality.
So let's bring this all home. We have covered a massive amount of ground here.
We have. We've gone from the microscopic bacteria on the tongue to the metaphysical meaning of a thumbprint.
If we had to synthesize this for the listener, longevity isn't just one pill. It's not one hack.
No, it's a system.
Okay.
And the takeaways are, 1, monitor the canaries, check your sperm, check your nitric oxide, watch for the early warning signs before the system crashes.
2, build the armor. Eat the 100 grams of protein, lift the weights. Muscle is your metabolic currency.
3, protect the engine. Support your mitochondria, especially when you're stressed. Don't let that metabolic contraction happen.
4, keep the software updated. Play. Do difficult things that require focus. Keep your brain plastic.
And 5, clean the operating system. Practice solitude. Be radically honest about your patterns and communicate with the people you love before it's too late.
And I would add the final thought from that thumbprint story. The goal is vitality, but the reality is transience.
Yeah.
We do all this work not to live forever, but to be fully alive, fully capable while we are here.
Well said. It's about being capable of leaving a thumbprint that matters.
So here's our challenge to you, the listener. You don't have to do all of this tomorrow. That's overwhelming. Just pick one area. Maybe you buy some arugula and throw out the mouthwash. Maybe you do some sprints before bed like a 4-year-old warrior.
Or maybe you just sit in a room quietly for 10 minutes.
Exactly. Just pick one upgrade for your system this week.
Start small, but start.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.